Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com, as well as on Amazon, and the books are also on audio. Now, I've got a brand new guest on. I'm happy to have Theodora Antar on. She is a mom. She's also a law student, notary, and nationwide legal advocate based in Connecticut. She is the founder of Pro Legal USA, a platform dedicated to exposing injustice and advocating for families impacted by corruption in the legal system. Now, her advocacy is deeply personal. As a mother of two daughters, ages 5 and 10, she has experienced firsthand the trauma of family court corruption. On May 25th, 2023, her youngest daughter was illegally removed from her care in a Connecticut court proceeding overseen by Judge Jane Kupson Grossman, where Theodora was denied due process. Less than a year later, on March 9th, 2024, her eldest daughter was taken by Port Authority police at JFK International Airport after they enforced an unserved ex parte custody order, again issued by the same judge. Now, Theodora has not seen her children since March 7th and 9th of 2024. Her fight for justice began after she reported the essay abuse of a minor, a disclosure that led to ongoing government retaliation and a campaign of persecution against her by Connecticut authorities. For 2 years, Theodora has tirelessly advocated for constitutional rights, government accountability, and child welfare, using her legal training and personal experience to support others facing similar injustices. Through Pro Legal USA and her public advocacy, Theodora works to shine a light on systemic failures, empower parents, and demand reform in the family courts nationwide. And I'm going to put her website in the podcast notes, which is prolegalusa.org. I welcome you, Theodora Antar, to the podcast. Where are you at with all of this?
Thank you so much for having me. The honor. Um, I have been trying to hold it all together, to be honest with you. Um, Tomorrow is Angelina's birthday. Sorry. And it's just really difficult because this will be the second year in a row where I'm not able to see her or FaceTime her on her birthday.
Mm.
Her father could let me FaceTime her, but he chooses not to. And even with court orders that say I'm allowed to have access, access is denied over and over. And with my older daughter, it's a little bit different because she's 10 and a half and she has her own cell phone. And so at least I'm able to talk to her directly. But Angelina, it's like everything is at the mercy of her father and
Mhm.
he wants to control everything. Um, and so basically, I had reported that Angelina was, saying that she was being abused while in the care of her father. And at that time, I had primary residency of her and I had sole custody of Juliana. And after I made these reports at the end of 2022, I had an attorney at the time, attorney Don Cretella out of Connecticut. And he said to me he was going to go after my ex for child support that he wasn't paying. He was going to fix loopholes in our custody schedule. He said, I kept telling him, look, my ex is threatening me, saying that if I don't do this, this, and that, he's going to take custody of my daughter and make it so he has custody. And the lawyer says, nope, guaranteed you'll never lose custody. You'll only lose custody if you abuse your child or neglect your child. And he promised me that it's impossible to lose custody. He promised me all of this. He said for $15,000 flat rate up front, that I later learned that family attorneys in Connecticut are not allowed to charge flat rate fees for their services. They have to billable hour you with a hourly rate. And so that was the first thing that he did that was wrong. And then he basically said to me that he went to law school at Quinnipiac School of Law with Jane Kupson Grossman. And I told him that earlier in that same year of 2022, that I was experiencing what I felt like was bias from her. For example, the very first time that I went in front of her was April 8th, 2022. During that hearing, it was an emergency ex parte custody hearing. And she was brushing it off. She wasn't letting us have an opportunity to testify. It was like as soon as I started speaking, she just immediately cut me off. No due process whatsoever. And she neglected everything I wrote in the affidavit about how my daughter, who was 2 at the time, was being, he wasn't following the agreement. He would keep her weeks at a time. When it says bring her back, he would refuse. And I filed an emergency ex parte because the police told me that if you both have custody and the father won't return the child and it's your parenting time, that it's not custodial interference. It's a civil matter and you have to family court. So I was advised by the police, the Orange Police Department and the Waterbury Police Department, to file for a ex parte custody order, which I did. That was seen by Jane Grossman. And by that time, it was like I filed it in February. The court date was in April. So it's like if you're filing an emergency motion, they have to be heard within 14 days. She scheduled mine for 2 months out. And by that time, the issue was I already had gotten my daughter back. And she's like, oh, well, there's no more emergency. But he wasn't held accountable for keeping her away from me for weeks at a time. And then the second time we went in front of her, then at the end of that April 8th hearing, she kicked us both out of the courtroom, yelled at us, talked to us like we're children, completely belittled us. And I begged her, I said, listen, we need to change the location where we do our exchanges. I said, right now, our agreement says it's at a gas station that used to be on my way to work. I said, I don't work at this place anymore. I no longer bring Angelina with me to work. Therefore, we need to find a different solution. I'd like to make it so we could do drop-offs at the school.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, nope, we're here only for the emergency motion. That's it. And, whatever. So she kicked us out. And I tried to follow my ex to the parking lot and tried to literally out of desperation begging him, because it was a Friday and the thing said we were supposed to do an exchange that afternoon. And I'm like, we can't do an exchange because I have a work obligation. My mom has the baby. Can you just go get her from my mom? It's on your court. Instead of co-parenting and being, agreeable, he's like, oh no, I'm meeting you at the gas station or nothing. It ended up, I called the police, New Haven PD, in the parking garage outside the courthouse, asking them to come make a report. When they got there, they split us up. And apparently, I don't know exactly what my ex told them, but he wrote a statement against me. And a couple weeks later, I had a warrant for my arrest. And I had just found out that I'd gotten accepted into University of Connecticut School of Law. I hadn't been arrested in 14 years, ever since I was a kid. And I had a clean record. So I was like, I can't get arrested. I can't have a criminal case. The law school will not approve of that, and
Right.
you're all of that. So I was really upset. And so that's when I first got in touch with Don Pratella. Somebody else knew his partner and referred me to him. And with the criminal case, Don Pratella didn't charge me much. It was like $1,500 or something. He said he was doing me a favor because it was a friend who referred it. And he ended up getting the charge nullied. It was a petty charge. It wasn't even serious. He apparently has connections with the prosecutors in New Haven. He got it nullied. That was it. But then it was like Matt and this other girl who was like stalking me. And when we stopped being friends, she decided to team up with Matt, Angelina's father, to try to do anything possible to go after me. So it's like, it's like somebody can't just say, okay, we're not going to be friends anymore. I'm just going to move on. No, they're going to contact my ex and say what can we do to destroy this girl's life and future and career. And my ex kept saying, I'm going to get you arrested. I'm going to put you in jail. I'm going to make it so I get custody and you have to pay me child support. I'm going to get you kicked out of law school. You'll never be a lawyer. He when I told him it was my dream to be a lawyer and that I wanted to go to law school, he told me I could never do it. He said, you'll never get in. You're never going to be able to do it. So when I actually got in, he was so angry. It's happy for me and saying, oh, look, maybe she'll be able to have a better career to do better for our daughter. Instead of being happy, he's just angry. It's this attitude, he has to control everything. It's financial abuse. It's if if I'm not with you, you're going to suffer. You're going to be homeless. You're going to lose everything. If you're with me, you'll have a nice life. That's basically the ultimatum he gave me. And I chose to not be with him. And that's when he aggressively tried to start, using his connections to get custody. And so, like, with this Don Pertella character, that was like resolved by like the summer of 2022. I thought he handled the criminal case well. I didn't have an issue with it. So then he said to me, "Oh, I know your ex is crazy. If you want, I can help you with the family matter as well." And he said that he went to law school with the judge and he knows her for 20 years. And I thought, okay, and so I was like, you know what? I can't take the risk of whatever he's threatening with because my child means so much to me. So it's like, even though I didn't have the money, I put it on a credit card because I was like, I'm desperate. I want to make sure that this goes well. And I thought like I could represent myself. I always had, but the way that my ex was acting and the fact that Grossman was starting to be so biased, like also before that, what really made me realize that Grossman was trouble was the next time we went in front of her was because like, see, April 8th of 2022, we went in front of her. She wouldn't resolve the drop-off issue. If she had just allowed us to resolve that right then and there, I would have never gotten arrested. We would have never had an argument in the parking lot. It would have been solved. But she forced us to have more conflict by refusing to let us address the issue, by saying that you have to file a different motion and come back on a different day, even though you're right here, right now. And in the past, there's been times when judges did the opposite and said, hey, whatever you guys want to talk about, we're here. So it's like the rules only apply when it's convenient to try to escalate the conflict. So that was my first experience with her. The second time was June 28th, 2022. And on this hearing, she basically was extremely biased. I had sole religious decision-making powers in my agreement. It was a court order. It was signed by both of us, a real agreement. And he agreed mom will make all religious decisions for Angelina. And, dad is agreeing to bring Angelina to any and all religious obligations, including or not limited to Sunday school and special religious events. Like the way it was written, it basically says that he has to bring her to anything to do with religion, and I call the shots on religion. He agreed to that. You're baptized in our church, everything. Well, then he would say, like, there was times when he would say, like, okay, yes, I agree to bring her to such and such religious event. Event would come, he wouldn't bring her. I file a motion for contempt. I filed a motion in April that gets scheduled for at the end of June again. So then it's like multiple more grievances kept happening during the time between April and June. But no matter what we filed, everything was getting pushed to the June 28th date. So when we went in front of Jane Grossman on that June 28th, 2022 date, there was like 10 different motions that were pending that were supposed to get addressed. And instead of her saying like, okay, I have motion 200, I have motion this, let's go through it, she was like trying to dictate how the proceeding was going to go and not letting me talk, not letting me show evidence. Like everything she was doing was corrupt. And she then said that she didn't believe that that's what our agreement said. It literally said mom makes all religious decisions. And she goes, nope, he would have never agreed to that if he knew that he had to bring her to church every Sunday. Why would he ever agree to that? Like, are you kidding me? He agreed it. He signed it in front of a notary under penalty of perjury. How can you question it? It's like the fact that like trying to argue with me, but I'm trying to say like respectfully, like I'm the one who wrote this agreement. I know exactly what it meant, what it means, and so does he. And she's like, no, he would have never signed it. Every Sunday is ridiculous. And so then she entered in orders after this is what they started doing, where when the court case was over, when the hearing was over, usually a judge will say the ruling at the end of the hearing. But this new thing they started doing is saying, oh, you guys leave, and then later on they issue orders at a different date. So later on, 2 days later, she issued a temporary order saying that the dad only has to bring Angelina to Sunday school and special religious events, but not weekly services. So how is a judge legally allowed in the United States to order about the practice of a religion when there's a pre-existing agreement that states that that child's mother and parental guardian and legal guardian has sole religious decision making about that child?
Right.
She
And you had an agreement. And isn't there a separation of church and state?
Exactly, the First Amendment. So here we go. So this was June 28th, 2022. I was scheduled to begin law school in September of 2022. I had already gotten accepted. I had that pending case with that arrest, whatever, it was get thrown out. And so I'm like, I didn't know everything about the Constitution and our rights and stuff like this, but I knew a little bit. And I'd
Mhm.
been to court before. I'd been to family court. I had sole custody of Juliana for 10 years. So how every time I went to court with no lawyer, the judges were fair. They were like, oh, do you have any more evidence to show, Miss? Sir, do you have more evidence? Okay, now we're gonna make a decision. Like they would explain what they're doing. Grossman was just like so corrupt, like literally like a criminal sitting there in a robe. And I had when after she did that day, I was so upset because at the end, like it was terrible. And at the end, she issued those orders like the next day and stuff. So I had filed a judicial review complaint against her,
Mhm.
and I filed a motion to recuse. And I did all this without knowing what I was doing, but the clerk's office said, oh, you can do this, you could do that. And, you know, that stuff made her angry when I did that. Then she started to retaliate even more, where, they would put in a motion that was about child support and say that it was going to be, or a motion that was about custody, and they would schedule it to be heard in child support court. And I would try to call and to the clerk's office and say, this is a custody motion. Why is it scheduled for the child support magistrate? And they'd be like, oh, you could file a motion for clarification. We can't give legal advice. So I'd file a motion for clarification, like this is clearly a custody motion. I like to clarify if this was a mistake, blah blah, or a case flow request. I tried everything they suggested. Grossman would say, "Oh, in light of the information in the motion, your motion is denied." Like what? That doesn't even make sense. Everything I said in the motion is accurate. So it's like she tries to paint this picture so that if somebody in the public who doesn't have a legal background or knowledge or understanding tries to read this stuff, they're going to be like, oh, why would a court or judge put a lie? They don't put lies. They don't maliciously do that. At least that's what I thought. So, after that time that happened, I went home and I started like Googling her and doing like research on her. And I found disturbing information. And, you can just Google her name, Jane Kupson Grossman. Tell people all the time. It's not just my stuff that pops up. Many other people's things come up. There's foundations that have written articles about this lady. She has a history for taking children away from mothers and sometimes fathers. And 90% of the time, it's because sexual abuse gets brought up in court. And her then MO is to immediately order that the parent that is either sexually abusing or facilitating the abuse to happen in their home, that person gets custody transferred to them. And the person who reported it gets supervised visitation. And then if you want to get your kid back, you're not going to get them back because even the appellate court is protecting her. And somebody that I spoke to stated that they have already had the FBI has been investigating for years now that she has ties to some, criminal organizations, and that because of her association with that she's protected on a high level. And I can tell you that, I've been fully transparent because these judges try to lie and paint a false narrative through their rulings and the things they choose to make public strategically. But like
Mhm.
I've been fully transparent by posting the full hearings on YouTube, like literally the full audio of the hearing, the transcripts, the court filings on Google Drive, everything on all my social medias. I put a links in my bio about it. And I've had 10 different accounts permanently banned between Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok. Like it's like I'm getting banned right and left and silenced and censored. And it's like if what I was saying is false, why the slander campaign? Why the censorship? Why trying to silence me? And then when trying to silence me didn't work, they switched to trying to continue to put more and more false, fraudulent criminal charges against me to try to put me in jail or a mental institution, which I don't need to be in a mental institution. I'm not um, unstable. I'm able to do more than many people have done. And I never neglected or abused my kids. I never had issues with substance abuse. The police in DCF had no concerns about me whatsoever. But this one judge on her own decided to order in the middle of a hearing that immediately that the father would get custody transferred to him when it had already been 4 years of her living full time with me and her sister in a nice house in the suburbs. And he was living in a dangerous inner city that's got like 500 sex offenders in a 5 mile radius. And none of this mattered. None of it mattered. And I had that May 25th hearing was like so terrible because like I skipped over a lot of stuff that happened in between, but I know we have limited time, but
That's okay.
it's a lot. Sorry.
That's okay. I mean, a lot of these cases are multifaceted, they're convoluted, and I think the goal of these judges are to give the kids to the abusers so the abusers can not take them to school and dumb them down, and then we'll have a nation of kids that can't think for themselves, and then the population will be easier to control.
I agree 100%. Like, I was trying to teach my kids about like religion and like God and faith. And as soon as I started talking about that in church, it was a problem. And it's like I say, like, imagine if a child who was a different religion than Christian went in and said, their parents said, I make sole religious decision. They're not following the religious schedule. I'd like to hold them in contempt. And the judge turns around and orders that the kid never has to go to those services again. That's
Mhm.
illegal. But then you try to file a complaint, they retaliate against you. So that's the thing. It's like we don't have a justice system. We don't have a system that allows people who are trying to like report public corruption to be safe. And it's scary because like, I've been threatened. I literally have, fears for my life and my kids' lives because of all of this. And it's like, I've been threatened right and left. And it's like, people make it clear that they know where I am and that, that they'll say things and reveal things that someone would only know if they're hacking my iCloud or hacking my Gmail or
Mhm.
whatever. So invasive. And like, I just feel like I'm being targeted now because I decided to speak up. And when they first took Angelina, I didn't speak up on social media. I listened to all these people that said to be quiet. And, that guy, Don Cortella, he committed malpractice.
Mhm.
And after he took my money, he didn't do anything to help me. And so I eventually fired him like on May 17th. And I asked for my file back and he refused to give it to me. And he filed a motion saying he needs permission from the court to give me back my file because it has financial information about my ex in it. But in Connecticut, it's mandatory disclosure to submit to the other side and each other the last 3 years of all your tax returns and
Mhm.
all your finances. That's mandatory disclosure. This lawyer tries to say that because that mandatory disclosure was in the file, that he can't give me that file unless he gets permission from Grossman. And so it's like, then I filed a motion saying, like, I need a continuance because our court date's in like 8 days and I need time to get another lawyer, and no lawyer will take on my case without my file. I need the file. So I filed a motion to compel to release the file and a motion to continue to have more time to get another lawyer. She denied them both. She said all pending motions would be heard on May 25th, including the motion about giving me my file back. And when that hearing started, which anyone can go on my YouTube channel and watch it, and on my website I have the link too. It's in the beginning she says, "Oh, only Matthew's going to be able to testify today, not you. We heard from you at the last hearing." The last hearing was 2 months before that. And during that hearing, it was a 2-hour hearing. And my lawyer didn't introduce a single piece of our evidence, none of the exhibits, nothing. So it's like for example, we look at this P. Diddy trial. Like, how many days of it are we on now? 8? It's like they're saying it's going to be an 8-week trial. Okay, if they get to decide that they need 8 weeks to have due process, why can't I decide that I need more than 2 hours when it involves something as important as my trial? Like,
Mhm.
2 hours, and then you're going to tell me that I can't testify? So she refused to swear me in. Only he got sworn in. Only he testified. She said I wasn't allowed to object. I wasn't allowed to show evidence. It was a nightmare. And like I said, it's posted for those who don't believe me or don't want to believe that this is real. And so that I walked in thinking it was a hearing on all pending motions. I walked out without custody. In the middle of it, she goes, "We're," because like, I was asking questions, or he testified that He didn't know the name of her school. He didn't know the name of her doctor. He made up lies on the record saying that we switched doctors like 4 times. No, we didn't. We switched twice. And the second time it was his idea. And like, so he's just lying. And when I tried to say objection, she threw me in the hallway. Then she comes back in. She's like, "Oh, you're asking him about all this stuff that's irrelevant. Not knowing your child's school and doctors irrelevant."
Oh my God, because my ex didn't even remember one of my children's birth dates. But I found this online as we were talking. The Foundation for Child Victims of the Family Court's action to remove Judge Jane Grossman, September 3rd, 2020, with Jill Jones Soderman.
Yes, and that is what when I researched her in 2020. That's why I got scared. That's why I dropped 15 grand that I didn't have on this lawyer who promised me that he would help me and that he knew her. And I said to the lawyer, I go, well, I have the judicial recusal filed. I want her to recuse. And he goes, no, I'm not going to represent you in the recusal. I'm filing a withdrawal for that motion. He says, you really think it's going to matter if she recuses herself? He goes, you really think they don't all sit around in the morning and drink coffee together? He's like, it doesn't matter what judge you have. They all sit around in the morning and discuss all the cases, and they all do whatever they all say, and it won't make a difference. And I said, I want to transfer the case to a different jurisdiction because at the time he was living in New Britain and I was living in Orange. So the proper JD would have been either Milford Court or New Britain Court. We were in New Haven. And I had originally filed it in New Haven and they took the case, but then I said I want to transfer it to Milford because I felt that Milford treats people better than New Haven, and they do. And they refuse to let me transfer. So again, like they have no jurisdiction, and they're refusing to let any other court with jurisdiction touch the case. And I'm fully convinced that New Haven Court and the majority of the city of New Haven is run behind the scenes by the mob. And if you look at history and stuff, like New Haven is like historically one of the bigger mob cities now in America, and a lot of corruption goes on under the scenes. And that article you just pulled up, I spoke with Jill Jones Soderman at length right after I lost custody, and she told me about another woman, Megan Cleary, who she helped them craft a lawsuit in federal court against Grossman, which you could look her up too. It was dismissed. They said that the same reasons they always dismiss everything: Rooker Feldman, judicial immunity, all the same stuff. And like in her case, it was the exact same thing. She reported the children were being sexually abused by the father. Grossman immediately ordered that the father would get custody. She put Megan on supervised visits. And I don't know if for how she ever saw her kids again. I never was able to speak to her. I know of another case, Lita Yundo and Jose Pinos. Same exact thing. This lady found me on TikTok and she said that the exact same thing. Jane Grossman put her on supervised visits and gave the dad custody after the daughter disclosed in a forensic interview that the father sexually abused her. And what's also interesting that a lot of people might not realize is what they're doing in Connecticut is something that is policy and not like statute or law. And basically, anytime that a parent or anybody is reporting like sexual abuse of a child, their new thing that they're doing is that they will in coordination with DCF, they'll schedule the child to go to a place like Yale or Klingberg or Hartford Hospital, which are like the major like hospitals in the areas. They'll schedule for them to go there for a forensic interview. And this forensic interview is essentially the child goes like, my daughter did 2 of them at Yale. And when they go, they say that nobody is allowed to watch the interview. The child is in a room alone with a social worker. The room, nothing in the room except for an easel. And there's a 2-way glass, and DCF and police are watching from the other side on the 2-way glass. So the child has no idea that DCF can see them. And they're not allowed to bring any props, no toys allowed. And the questions and series of questions that they ask is exactly the same from age 3 through 17. And they stated to me that they're not allowed to ask any leading questions. So if the only way to proceed would be to ask a leading question happens, then they close the interview. And so like, I'm over here naive thinking that like, my daughter made disclosure that going there would be a good idea. And like, I'm doing what I'm told. Like if I said, If she told me this, I didn't report it, I would be neglecting her. So I'm doing what any mom would do and report it. I'm not, no mom is going to say, I'm not going to report this because I'm afraid that I will lose custody for being accused of lying. But apparently, every mother should have that fear because this is what it's happening now, not just in Connecticut, all over the country. And
Mm-hmm.
me out and going public with my story resulted in hundreds of people reaching out to me from all over the country telling me the same story, like a blueprint: sexual abuse reported, transfer of custody, supervised visits, or no contact in some cases. I know one girl, she hasn't seen her kids or talked to her kids in more than 2 years. Hasn't even had a word to them. And another girl like that too, almost 2 years. And other ones, it's, a supervised visit a couple hours a week at a center that they have to pay for. Um, the current thing that Grossman says in her fraudulent order, which is void ab initio, but if you want to say whatever it says that I'm allowed to have a maximum. I can have supervised visits at a supervised facility that has to be in the community only that I have to pay for, and I can have a maximum of once per month, and it has to be agreed upon by the dad.
Oh, they all
Bef-
do this.
Before that, it said mother's access is as determined by the father in the presence of a third party designated by the father. So I would say to him every day, I'd like to see my daughter. When can I see her? And he'd be like, well, I'm sorry. Everybody I know hates you. Nobody wants to supervise for you. So you can't see her. And I'd be like, well, I have a list of 5 different people who said they would do it. Will you let them do it? And he'd be like, oh, I need their ID. I need their blood type. I need this and that. They give him all that. And then he'd be like, I'm not comfortable with you. I'm not letting you supervise. Like, or he would just stop answering and like read my message and say nothing. And like then I would say like, oh well, I can hire and pay for a professional supervisor, but they're asking for a schedule. Can you please provide me a schedule? He would refuse. He never once gave me a schedule at all. So neither me or Angelina knew when we would ever see each other. And so like from May of 2023 until March of 2024, I still had sole custody of Juliana, but supervised visits only on Angelina. So not only was I being isolated from her, but her sister was. And these girls had bunk beds in their room, sharing a bedroom. This was the only home she ever knew
Hmm.
coming home from the hospital. And like after May 25th, 2023, that's when she ordered the custody switch. And then 2 weeks later, my ex left his apartment to go move back into his mother's basement.
Oh,
He could have a free babysitter,
oh,
go out parties. He does a lot of drugs, drinks, and he like works all the time. So for him, he doesn't care about having sole custody. He's not the one watching her. And when his mom isn't watching her, his son Dominic, who's 19, the one who my daughter said was sexually abusing her, he's the one babysitting her. So on the day when they ordered a custody change, the Judge Grossman said to Matt, like, oh, well, who's going to watch Angelina while you're at, because he's saying he has no job. He can't afford daycare. So he's like, who's going to watch her while you're at work on the days you are working? And he's like, oh, my son can watch her. So Grossman was okay with him saying that the son who was accused of sexual abuse was going to watch her. Meanwhile, I was being told to be on supervised visits because she said I was dangerous for reporting it. And so then it was like I tried to file an appeal. The appellate court said that they affirm the decision of the trial court per curiam. And there's another woman, you probably heard of her, Margaret Sullivan from Connecticut. I don't know if you know her, but
mm-mm.
her case is like RH versus MH. And it was in the Connecticut appellate court, where in her case it was similar, where the judge ordered that basically the husband dictates how and if or when she sees her kids. And she filed an appeal. She represented herself as the first pro se appellant in the Connecticut appellate court to be pro se. That I think she won her case, and they determined in the appellate court that it is unconstitutional and illegal for a judge to issue a custody order that um, that gives the adversarial party control over the other person's access and visitation. And this wasn't the first decision. Like her case won. She was citing a case that came before. There was actually 2 cases before in the appellate court that ruled that it's unconstitutional. So that's the thing. once something gets overturned on appeal and gets labeled as unconstitutional, the judges are still issuing the same type of rulings over and over and over and over, banking on the fact that most people can't afford an attorney or figure out how to do pro se and appeal, which is expensive and tedious and is filled with gatekeeping tactics. Like you don't use a certain font.
Mhm.
Your margins are 0.01 centimeter off. We're returning your paper that you spent $50 to overnight with UPS. Now have fun. Now your thing's dismissed. If you want to renew it, pay us $300 and we might say no to deny your request. So it's like, why is it like that? There shouldn't be fees at all. There should be no fees. We pay all these taxes to our
Mhm.
state. The states should cover this. It's a public service. Like I say to people, you go to the police department to make a report. Do they ask you for money to file it? No. No police department in America will ever ask you to pay to file a police report. But every court in America will ask you to pay to file a lawsuit or file a complaint, what you have the right to do under the First Amendment, right to address grievances with the government. And that is what our First Amendment right is, that people seem to think is like uh discretionary. Like they're treating all of our rights as discretionary. And like the Supreme Court of the United States has repeatedly said that parental rights are you know, inherent rights. Like these are like inherent. They're not up for grabs by the state. And so like what they're doing is they're not, in my case and all these others, like they're not terminating our parental rights. We still have our parental rights. There's no DCF case against us. There's no TPR case. It's simply a judge using their discretion under the best interest of the child standard, which states that they're not required to use any of the 17 factors that they state. They gives them full discretion. And like when the appellate court, protects them, that lady Margaret, she won on appeal, and her ex-husband filed asking that the Supreme Court look at it. And so then it went to the Supreme Court of Connecticut, and she won again, pro se. She was the first pro se ever in history to win in the Supreme Court. And they affirmed that this is illegal, it's unconstitutional. So, but when I did my appeal, that took 13 months that I navigated by myself, and it got dismissed and reinstated so many times because it's like so hard to do it. They said no. They said one sentence. We affirm the decision of the trial court. Period. Per curiam. Period. That's it. And apparently that means the whole entire court agreed, which is a joke because if you look at my brief, that lady Margaret, I was hanging out with her. She supervised a couple of my visits with Angelina.
Mhm.
She came to my house. She used to be a teacher. She came to my house and helped me do my brief for my appeal. She brought her brief and let me use it. And I literally some sections of case law were copied and pasted directly from hers. The same argument, but
Mhm.
was granted and mine wasn't. So like, are you trying? Nobody can give a logical or legal explanation for why that would happen. It's pure corruption, and they're doing it because then it's like, oh, now what was I going to do? File to the Supreme Court? It's like every time you file something, it's like $300, $250 to file it, and then I file stuff in the Supreme Court and they kick it back, and I'm like, you know what? I'm tired of this. Like, I can't afford. I spent over 40,000 now between all the filing fees, everything, and it's like they just dismiss it, throw it away. I never get a trial. I never get a hearing on the merits. I never get due process. I never get equal protection. Like it's like they're acting like me and my kids' rights don't matter. What's more important to them is covering up the sexual abuse and the trafficking and all the stuff that they're doing. Because when I first wrote, I filed a federal lawsuit, a RICO lawsuit in October 2023 that was dismissed last year with prejudice by corrupt federal judge Michael Peter Shea in the District of Connecticut, who says that because I had a bankruptcy case that was dismissed, that now all my federal lawsuits against the judges and everybody are getting dismissed with prejudice. Show me which law says that if somebody's bankruptcy gets dismissed, that every lawsuit that they have is now going to be dismissed with prejudice. I will give anybody who could find me that law all the money they want because it doesn't exist. Like, and it's sad because he did all this even when I filed the lawsuit against him months prior. He refused to recuse himself. I cited all these he had kids that went to school and played sports with some of the lawyers on the case. You think that he recused himself? No. Even after I filed 5 different recusals, he refused. So it's like now it's like I have so many things that I filed in so many different venues, and I just like I physically can't do it all by myself. And so
Hmm.
that's where I'm at now, is trying to like re-strategize, because it's like I try to just do everything, and it's like when you try to do all that, it's like you put too much on your plate and then you can't accomplish it. And I feel like for me, if I make a more realistic goals of like, okay, today I'm only going to focus on this one filing, instead of saying like, oh, I need to do like 700 papers all by today, like.
Oh,
But it's hard, and I feel like no lawyer will touch my case. Anybody who is in my shoes, like, no lawyers will touch the case. And there was one lawyer also, and people should know these names to not get involved. Her name's Stephanie Bernstein in Connecticut. And when I was trying to get a different lawyer, she was like, okay, I'll take your case. I think she wanted like $10,000 or something for a retainer. And I sent her all the videos that I had sent to the police showing my daughter disclosing about the abuse. And she said to me, like, I showed her records from Yale that they documented that my daughter made a disclosure in the forensic interview, but the police wouldn't arrest the guy. And the same in the other girl, Lita. There was documentation. It said in the forensic interview report, like, she said such and such abuse happened, but we think that maybe she was coached, so we're not going to make an arrest. In mine, it just said like, okay, Angelina said, Dominic sits on her and makes her sit on him. And then they told me that when they asked her what happened, to show them what Dominic does, she said like, oh, I can't show you because I don't have my stuffed animal with me. And she had been acting it out on her stuffed animals in all of these videos that I was catching her do it. And I was sending it to the police and DCF. And they're like, oh, I sent them like 70 videos to New Britain PD. They said that they only got 6. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to give you a flash drive with all the other ones. Can you actually watch them and like take the time to investigate this? And they're like, oh, yeah, sure. Then like a week later, they close the investigation. And like, it's just, it's so discouraging, because I feel like, especially when you're a woman, especially when you are like a single woman going into a police department where it's all males, or maybe they have like a kind of like just misogynistic attitude and stuff. And it's like, if I went in there with my husband or with my father, they would take me seriously. But when you go in there by yourself, it's like they automatically like try to spin it around to make it seem like you're just some bitter ex that wants to make up a lie. And it's like, why would I want to make up a lie? I already had custody. It's
mm,
not like any reason to lose custody. I could have just chose not to go to court. It was my case. I was a plaintiff. So the fact that they're trying to say that I lied, and like even Grossman started writing an order saying like the mother's allegations of sexual abuse are false. The videos the mother had were coached. She never saw the videos. Videos were not coached, and she never saw them. And police and DCF never said they were coached. And like she then subpoenaed the DCF worker and the detective by herself. In a family court case, people don't realize this. You're having a bench trial if you get a trial. You're not getting a jury trial. But in a case like where there's a jury, the jury is the fact finder collectively. So the jury is the one who's going to be making up the verdict at the end.
mhm.
In a case where it's a family case and it's a bench, you have the judge. The judge is the fact finder. So they're equivalent to the jury. So imagine if tomorrow they say that the jury in the P. Diddy trial decided to subpoena his daughter. The jury is not allowed to subpoena people. The jury's only job is to listen to whatever's presented in court, which is why they tell you, like, if you know the guy outside of court and you know facts that are not being presented in the case, you need to recuse yourself from the jury and they'll excuse you. A judge needs to do the same. If they went to high school with you and it's you versus your ex, like they're supposed to say, oh, okay, you know what, I need to recuse myself. And that's the same thing, because like they're strictly a neutral fact finder in that role. What place does a neutral fact finder have to issue subpoenas by herself, paid for by the court, for the detective and the DCF worker who watched the forensic interview of my daughter? This same forensic interview that they never released to me It said that it's property of the New Bern Police Department and I can never get it. But somebody else told me that if you have a lawyer, they can request it. So again, if you don't have the money to pay for a private lawyer or get a lawyer to actually agree to help you,
Hmm.
then what, you don't get it? That's again unconstitutional and illegal what they're doing. But if you bring that up, then they're like, okay, now we're gonna go after her. And like that's like how I feel like I've been like, just attacked right and left for everything that I've done. And that they try to paint me out to be a bad person. But it's like, okay, well, you never said I was a bad person until I started reporting that my daughter was saying she was being sexually abused. So what was the difference? And now I'm bad. Me reporting the abuse? Why is it that reporting abuse is treated as a crime with no due process? Like if it's a crime, that's if I lied about the sexual abuse, that's aggravated perjury. Why am I not being charged with aggravated perjury for lying? Because nobody's from the authorities are saying that I'm lying. Only Jane Kupson Grossman said it. But then every other judge would just do whatever she said. And so it's very frustrating. I feel like, I just really want everybody to know that this is happening, not just to me, not just to others, like on a mass scale all over. And a lot of people are, like a lot of people are losing their lives. Like people are committing suicide. Like it's bad. A lot of people can't handle this. And if I can just, educate people and share the knowledge that I wish that people shared with me, that I wish I knew then what I know now, then at least I'm, doing the best I can. And I feel like my kids know that they're basically hostages at this point. And so
Right.
it's like scary. And like this is like a massive like public like epidemic in the United States. It's not talked about. And you know what? The news in Connecticut when it first happened, I tried to tell them what happened, and they said that they have a contract with the state of Connecticut that says that they are not allowed to report on anything that makes the judges look bad. So, how can the news companies, which are all private, by the way, none of them are state run, these are private media companies making private contracts with the state to censor what they're putting in the news. And then it's like, then I try to post it on social media because if the real media is fake, let's post the real thing on social media where everybody goes anyway. And then I'm getting my videos taken down, my accounts taken down.
Media taken down and your posts and everything.
Yeah, it's been crazy. Like I had 133,000 followers on TikTok and I was gaining like thousands every week. And um, my account was permanently banned, and it was permanently banned 3 times, and I got it back twice, and on the third time they wouldn't give it back. Then they basically banned my device, my IP. I had like 4 subsequent accounts that were all banned. Um, and then, my Instagram was recently just banned that I had for 15 years with 15 years of photos and memories, and my Facebook that I had for 13 years with all these memories and stuff. And it's just sad because it's like, I never thought that I would need to like go back on Facebook and re-download all of those pictures from like when my kids were little and stuff like that. I always thought and like they didn't give me any warning either. And in the
Right.
past, like Facebook had like taken stuff down, but now when they banned me, it was like no warning whatsoever. And they claimed that there was one post on Instagram that I posted, which was a screenshot of messages from our family wizard. And like I posted a screenshot of the messages, and then they said that it was getting taken down because they claimed it was um frauds and scams. They said frauds and scams, some that I was uh pretending to like, I don't even know what they said, something that made no sense. I tried to appeal. Instantly my appeal was denied. But not only did they ban my Instagram, but when they banned it, it also banned my Facebook that was attached to it and all of these business pages that I had for years. So all my business Instagram and Facebooks were banned along with my personal Instagram and Facebook just a couple weeks ago. And then I made another one and that one was banned. So it's like, I how are you supposed to like speak up when
Right. Yeah,
You're
and
being
there's no one to
silenced.
call when you try to, there's no one to call on, Instagram or Facebook.
Yeah, it's like you're talking to bots. Like, good luck if you even get a response that's not a bot. Like, and so uh, I'm just, I know that Meta is basically like being looked at right now when they have their own thing going on. So it's like you would think that they wouldn't continue to silence people. And I think that there's case law where it says that like the social media is like a modern day like public square. So when they start censoring and silencing people on social media, they, even though they're private companies, they're obligated to honor those First Amendment rights to free speech. And like free speech is being attacked right and left. And like the people who say that they care about free speech are the ones suppressing the ones who are trying to speak the truth. And like, it's crazy. I'm sure you've had so many stories of people over the years dealing with the same kind of thing, and it's like, when does it end? And I think that now we're starting to see people like grouping together for the first time and
Hmm.
trying to like put aside people's differences, because you always see like, oh, mother's rights, father's rights, you know always creating division. And it's like
Right.
now I'm seeing a lot of groups where like people, moms and dads, everybody working together to try to like do these like movements of, supporting each other, everybody getting on the same page across different states. And, I feel like there's a lot of like positive things that are happening right now. And
Hmm.
I'm involved in a few of them. And a lot of these people have a lot of motivation and ambition, and they're like good at kind of getting everybody else to get together too. So I think that's good. And I've been fighting this for so long that it's draining, and physically, emotionally, mentally, it's like taking a toll on me. And so like I
Yeah.
need to put my health first, because like that's most important right now. And so like I need to focus on like not having insane amounts of stress for one. And so like just taking it one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, like,
Hmm.
and
Oh,
talking to my kids when I can, it does give me the strength to keep going. And so I just want my kids to know that like, I will continue to fight as long as I need to, and that all of this is for them, because I need to be able to, you know, fight. I can't just give up. I'm not just going to give up on my children.
hmm. Now, let me ask you one more thing before I know we part, but how did you start prolegalusa.org?
So I just recently started it up because of the fact that I kept getting banned on all these other platforms. So I wanted to have one platform where I would be able to put whatever I want and not have to worry about it getting taken down. And I thought that it was a good way to where people can, reach out to me if they need to. And if people, obviously, I'm not giving people legal advice, but if somebody, wants to talk to me as an advocate and talk to me about their case and, you know, hear my opinion, I'm happy to do that. And I also, wanted to have a canvas with the website so that I could put like specific links to some of the videos. Like people say, okay, where's all the proof? Where's all the proof?
Hmm.
I want to be able to put it there. So to say, look, here's the hearing where she took my daughter. Here's the link on YouTube. Anyone could go on YouTube and sift through all the videos, but having like a platform where I can just kind of make it customized to what's going on, I think is was my goal. And I do want to still, offer that if anybody wants to reach out to me, they can. And um, I just want to be able to, advocate too, because it's hard, especially when you feel alone and the
Hmm.
trauma and everybody, even if people need somebody to talk to, I try to just listen.
Right. I think once we get family court abolished and gone, I think we're all going to be a lot happier because we can take our cases to civil court where we can have a jury if a parent wants.
Yeah, and like it used to be like that. Or in law school, they told us that back in the day, the Supreme Court used to hear divorces, and you used to be able to go to federal court for everything. But then they started pushing all this administrative law, which really there's no administrative branch of government. So it's like it's the pushback between having no control and the government having all control and no control. There's pushback on all each way you go. I personally believe that the government should not. The Constitution limits what the government can do. It doesn't tell us what our rights are.
Hmm.
It tells the government what they're limited to, what they can and can't do. And so that's what people need to remember is like our rights are given to us at birth. Like we have the right for familial association. You have the right to have a partner, get married, have children, to have food, to be safe, to not be abused. Like these are all like basic human rights. And so when they're violating it under the color of law on such a mass scale, and the Title 4D and all of this is all part of it.
Yep.
And this is why like it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. The same reason why when people speak up about somebody wants to cure cancer, next thing you know, they end up dead.
Hmm.
Somebody wants to expose family court, next thing you know, they're in jail with $1 million bond. Or
Yeah.
they disappear. And so, I think everything happens for a reason. And if anything, my children will know that I didn't just give up. I'm continuing to fight any way possible, even if I don't think that there's a real way to get justice. Like you said, one day we'll be able to look back and family court won't be a thing anymore. And once they blow the whistle on it to the point where they can't hide it anymore, it's going to be abolished.
Hmm.
And it'll just be civil and criminal, and you'll be able to do it like that, because what they're doing now is it's a fake court. It's acting.
Right. It's the Wild West. It's lawless. People don't realize this. I just talked to a parent last week and I said, you do know they don't look at evidence and there's no due process in there, right? What? I didn't know that. It's like, be prepared. If there's any way you can get out of going in there, you try your best. But hey, if you're dealing with a personality disorder, you know how they just suck you into court, whether you want to go in there or not.
Yeah, and Jane Grossman stated that I have an undiagnosed and untreated personality disorder.
Sounds like she does.
She diagnosed me with a personality disorder.
Oh,
Imagine, not only can she legally kidnap your kids, but she can also diagnose you with mental disorders.
oh
It's,
yeah.
so imagine if the jury, like I say that example a lot, but like picture a jury saying no, the defendant the defendant clearly has this mental disorder, even though there was zero evidence shown that. We just are going to diagnose him ourselves and use that as law and fact and publish it. And I asked, like, how come certain things like get reported and certain things don't when it comes to like legal decisions? It's because if the judge decides to send it to like the national reporter agency that publishes it, then it will. And so she made sure to send off the ones about the memorandums she wrote about me, which says that I lied about sexual abuse, that I have mental health issues, that I'm dangerous and crazy because I reported this and lied. Um, that's now like part of like the permanent public record of case law. So it's just it's all strategic. And I'll give it to them. These people are smart criminals. They're very sophisticated criminals, and but they're a little sloppy. And that's the thing. When people get too comfortable, they start to get sloppy, and that's when they start to fall. And when one falls, they all fall.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's all I'm gonna say about that.
Well, there's always prayer. I prayed that God would deal with my judge, and he did in his timing, which was fine. That story, I tell it here and there on my podcast, you know, um, but God will deal with these people.
Absolutely. And I think, I definitely see that in this new administration, it seems to be like the FBI director, Kash Patel, is not messing around, and like they're not afraid to like hold judges accountable. And so, it's a good thing, I think.
Yes, yes, I do too. It's a matter of time. I know people are anxious for, the administration to get into these family courts. I think it's going to take time because they have so much corruption and all
Yeah,
these other courts to sift through by the time they get to us. And it's going to take time, but it's going to happen. I just know it. At some point, And that's why I'm so glad you came on to speak out. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Thank you again so much for having me. It was a big pleasure. And only last thing I would add is that if anything I said resonates with anybody, feel free to reach out to me. And anybody from Connecticut specifically that's dealt with this judge, I'm interested to hearing other people's stories and trying to document uh, state by state names of victims so that we can show that this is happening all over the country.
Hmm.
So if anybody, don't be shy. You can find me on social media, and I think you said you put it's prolegalusa.org.
Okay, gotcha. And I'll put that in the podcast notes. So, hey, don't jump off, okay?
Okay.
Slam the Gavel's a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Apple, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. Thank you, Theodora Antar, for speaking out. So I totally appreciate you.
Thank you so much.